So today's discussion is going to be about emotional intelligence. So my name is Celia Denton. I'm an industrial psychologist and I'm the owner of PTES. I'm an industrial psychologist and I'm the owner of PTES Consulting. So we do psychometric assessments of any kind, of any type, for recruitment, personal development, all of that. We are presenting this today together with the HR Talk that provides HR solutions to our clients. And today will be specifically about emotional intelligence. Okay, so let's start with a very interesting story about emotional intelligence. So I'm taking you all to this first picture over here. So for these people out there that has not heard about Lisa Nowak, maybe for the people that were here before, that's seen this presentation before, will know the story. This is one of the best examples of emotional intelligence, possibly versus your cognitive intelligence that you can get. So let's start with Lisa Nowak. You're going to ask me, like, why? Why are we talking about this? So let me give you a little bit of background. To become an astronaut with NASA is a grueling process that includes rigorous and challenging selection procedures. Out of thousands of applicants, only about half a dozen is selected each decade. So in order to be able to apply, you need extensive experience, knowledge in science and engineering. So not only do you need to be physically strong, you need to be a pilot with about 1,000 hours experience. So let's look at Lisa Nowak. She adhered to all the criteria above. She had a master's degree in aeronautical engineering and had studied postgraduate astrophysics with the US Naval Academy. She flew air missions for the US Navy in the Pacific for over 5 years. So air missions in the US, we're talking fighter pilot stuff, yeah. And in 1996, she was one of the fortunate few to be selected to become an astronaut. Okay, so this is Lisa Nowak. So you've got her background story, her experience. She's hot stuff. This is a woman who's achieved a hell of a lot. Okay, look at the next slide. So this is where I'm building up towards. So Lisa Nowak, this is the lady in the middle here. This is the one that I've just been talking to you about. Lots of experience, degrees, everything, cognitively incredibly intelligent. So in 2007, she discovered that her lover or her boyfriend, it was this guy on the left here, was seeing another woman. So to give you a little bit of background, Lisa Nowak is a married woman with 2 children at home. While she was employed here at NASA, she had an affair with this guy. And what happened is she found out that after they broke up, that he was having an affair with this lady here on the right-hand side. So in 2007, she drove 15 hours straight in a diaper from Houston, Orlando, in order to confront her boyfriend's new girlfriend in a parking lot at an airport. So what was interesting about this whole situation, so we're talking about the diaper here because this is the diapers that the guys use in space. So this is really to be able to hold out for quite a long time. So she drove 15 hours straight in this diaper without refusing to stop to confront this new girlfriend of her ex-lover. So she packed zip ties, pepper spray, a large garbage bags, and had some vague but not really thought through plan to kidnap the woman. So remember now, they are all at NASA. This is a very top selected few individuals, like probably 6 or 7 of them, really, really highly qualified, really important people. So they are the achievers there. So I think there could have also been a bond between them, because it's just them that's been selected worldwide. So the fact that she packed all of this stuff, we don't know what her plan was, but before she could even get the woman out of her car, Lisa had emotional breakdown, resulted in her being arrested quickly. So what happened is Lisa Nowak got there, had the sort of plan, and could not go through with it because she had an emotional breakdown. So that's the scenario. Let's look at the next one. So she was arrested. And she was initially charged with attempted murder because we could all suspect that this is probably what was going to happen. So she was charged with attempted murder and kidnapping, but charges were eventually reduced to burglary and misdemeanors. So she pleaded guilty in 2009 and was sentenced to a year of probation. The following year, Nowak was discharged from the Navy. She now lives in Texas and works in the private sector. So she lost every single thing. This was a woman who went to space. This woman lost every single thing because of this whole entire incident. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the Lisa Nowak story because you're going to ask me, but how do I connect this? What has it got to do with emotional intelligence? You will see just now. So let's look at an emotion first. An emotion is a complex psychological state that involves three distinct components. So firstly, a subjective experience. So there's a thing that happens, a subjective experience. Then there's a physiological response. And then there's a behavioral or expressive response. It always works like that with an emotion. There's a situation that triggers it. There's a physiological response by the body. And then there's a behavioral or expressive response. So let's look at an example, being stuck in traffic. What happens? Traffic is your first situation. You have a physiological response, which is either panic or stress or anxiety or whatever. And then your behavioral response would be to either drive erratically or maybe even drive slower, whatever, or trying to get off the highway, hooting at people, whatever. So the three key elements of an emotion is the subjective experience, being stuck in traffic. Secondly, the physiological response, that could be anything. Think of your own, feeling panic, stressed, anxious, frustrated, irritated. And then the last one, a behavioral or expressive response, which is you may be driving erratically. Look at how people drive in traffic. Sometimes people just fall into place. Other people weave in and out. You know how it goes. So it's always those three. Now, for you guys who've done the stress management with me, I will explain what actually happens with these three components. There's actually always, between the experience and the physiological response, there's always a thought process first. This is what we do in the stress management course. And it's always like that with everyone. Don't think that you are someone who does not think about the situation which is causing the emotion. It's standard across the board for every single person. There's an experience, and before you could have your emotion, your physiological reaction, there's thinking about it. And it's our thinking that's dysfunctional or good or whatever. But that we address in the stress management course in more detail. So this is the emotion. Now let's look at emotional intelligence. Let me just quickly empty or move this thing. Sorry, I just jumped a page. Okay. So what is emotional intelligence? Let's look at the definition. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions. So some researchers suggest that emotional intelligence can be learned and strengthened, while others claim that it's inborn. I do think that you can do this better. Research also tells us that the emotional intelligence is only crystallized here by the age of 35, around 35, and which means that you can still develop and polish your sharp edges. You can absolutely do that. And the second one here, the ability to express and control emotions is essential, but so is the ability to understand, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others. So imagine a world in which you could not understand when a friend was feeling sad or when a coworker was angry. So psychologists refer to this ability as emotional intelligence, and some experts even suggest that it can be more important than IQ in our life. So remember now, Lisa Nowak, high on the IQ, we can safely assume that the EQ was not so well developed. Okay, so let's go back to Lisa. How does this link to Lisa? So EQ, this is emotional intelligence, is the ability to perceive, control, and evaluate an emotion. So what emotions did Lisa experience? So please give me some comments in the chat box if you would like to give your own thoughts about this, because I want you to analyze it step by step. So let me talk about Lisa Nowak again for a second. So what emotions did she experience? Remember now, she's part of the top people in the country, possibly even internationally, because I think they are open to other countries, the people as well, when they select recruits for NASA. So what emotions do you think she experienced? She's part of the top selected people, highly intelligent. She's probably part of the small little group with whom she's got a connection. So she found a bond with this guy because it's just them. They are selected to go to space, which is also something that's quite incredible. There's nothing else that you can compare it to in this world. So she had a thing with this individual, and then that broke up. So can you imagine, she was maybe very much in love, very much involved, and then there was a breakup, possibly feelings of rejection, whatever, depending on her background. And then the second one, express and control emotions. Was Lisa able to constructively express and control her emotions? So do you think that she was able to actually express what she was feeling to these people that were involved? And do you think she was able to control it? So if she doesn't know what she's feeling, she cannot control it. So that is the second part there. If she doesn't understand herself and what she's going through, because remember, she must have been very confused because she's married with children. And separate from that, there's a boyfriend, and that's broken up, and he's got another person in his life now. It must have been incredibly confusing. Now, my last question to you is, understand, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others. Did she understand the emotions and the feelings of the other parties involved here? So now we look again, let's look away from her. Let's look at her husband and the children. And on the other hand, there's the boyfriend with his new girlfriend. So there's quite a few role players here. Do you think that she thought of any one of them at any particular point? So let's just quickly go to the comments here. Okay, so firstly, what emotions did Lisa experience? So someone said, yeah, surprise. Someone said humiliation, there's shock, anger, absolutely. Someone else said maybe frustration, jealousy, anger. I like the jealousy component here because remember, these people must be highly competitive. We're talking about 6 people that get selected every 10 years. That's the top of their class, hot stuff. And so there could have been a whole bunch of emotions. Someone else here said maybe feelings of betrayal. Yes, so even though she was in the wrong for having an affair, you maybe feel betrayed by your inner little circle of excellence. Devastated, someone else said jealousy again, anxiety with a panic attack. I'm sure that she had such a flood of emotions that you could possibly say that she may have had such anxiety with panic, definitely. So for you to get into your car with a diaper on that you use in space with all of that stuff in the boot of the car, it must have been total panic. And now lastly, she was obviously not able to communicate her feelings and her emotions correctly, as well as to the right people. I don't think she spoke to anyone at all. But lastly, do you think that she understood or considered the feelings and emotions of anyone else? So once again, think about the husband with the children, and on the other hand, the ex-lover with his new girlfriend. This is such a good point because I don't think she thought of them at all. She was so overwhelmed with her feelings. I don't think that anything else surfaced. She was only thinking about how to eliminate the threat. And the threat was probably going to leave her alone. Was going to leave her to be abandoned. She was left rejected. So if you maybe have a high performing person here that's always done extremely well on the IQ part, the IQ part, cognitively always excelling, and now she's losing a lover to someone else. So for the first time, she's losing. So totally overwhelmed with feelings, cannot think straight. All right, so let me look at what IQ is not. This is very, very important because This is the part that always confuses everyone. This is why people don't want to entertain emotional intelligence, because they think it's all about huggy, kissy, cutie, tolerating softness. No, it's not. You don't understand. If that is what you think, you are wrong. So emotional intelligence is not agreeableness. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone. It's not constant optimism. It's not constant happiness, calmness, dropping your own standards, giving excuses to poor performance, letting people get away with things. It's not constant hugging and consoling. So this is, I think, why when we work with people in the corporate environment, they all, you need to be tough and firm. You can be tough and firm with high emotional intelligence, understanding what other people are going through. It does not mean that you agree with every single thing. So let's look at what it is. Firstly, let's look at what low EQ looks like. So we looked at what it's not. This is what it would look like in practice. Being argumentative, not listening. You may think you're a good listener. Think again. We're not that good as we think we are. So being argumentative, not listening, blaming others. Keep an eye on yourself. As soon as you push the blame to someone else, just step back a second and think, what was my part of it? What was my portion? What was my part in this? Emotional outbursts, always having to be right, oblivious to others' feelings, poor coping skills, turning conversations to yourself, struggling with relationships. So struggling with relationships, that means it's quite in a bad state. But most of us has got a little bit of all of this. All right, let's look at what the high IQ looks like. So high emotionally intelligent individuals control their interactions with toxic people by keeping their feelings in check. So when they need to confront a toxic person, they approach the situation rationally. They identify their own emotions and don't allow anger or frustration to fuel the chaos. Listen, if you're not perfect with this yet, don't worry too much, because it's quite difficult to stay calm when you are in a difficult, challenging meeting. So someone with high EQ will have a robust emotional vocabulary, curious about people, know their own strengths and weaknesses, good judge of character, difficult to offend, let go of mistakes, they don't hold grudges, they neutralize toxic people, they don't seek perfection, they can disconnect. Disconnection means that I can just switch off the TV or my cell phone for an hour and just be with myself. Limit your coffee intake. And the reason why we say coffee intake is because caffeine is a fake stimulant of the central nervous system. So you will get the same stimulation if you meditate and if you do something like yoga. But what we think the caffeine is doing, we think it's doing us a massive favor by, like, it's making us motivated. It's actually just a false stimulation of the central nervous system. So I'm not saying stop drinking your coffee. I'm just saying keep an eye on it. It mustn't be too much, because it will stimulate you tremendously. To keep an eye on it. You can also drink a very decent or good decaf here and there. Get enough sleep. Stop negative talk in its tracks, and you won't let anyone limit your joy. Keep an eye on these things, because when let go of your own mistakes. Don't be so easily offended when someone says something, and do introspection. Look into yourself. What is it that you contributed? Take your part. It doesn't have to be you're either guilty or not guilty. You can be partially involved. We always think it has to be one or the other. No, it doesn't. It's a whole dynamic of things. Let's look at the 4 levels of emotional intelligence. I want to move fairly fast because I want to do the self-scoring questionnaire at the end. We usually skip that part because we don't have enough time. Please remember to put in any comments in the chat box if you want to talk about something. So the 4 levels of emotional intelligence: perceiving emotions. So the first step in understanding emotions is to perceive them accurately. In many cases, this might involve understanding nonverbal signals such as body language or facial expressions. Then the second one, reasoning with emotions. The next step involves using emotions to promote thinking and cognitive activity. Emotions help prioritize what we pay attention and react to. We respond emotionally to things that garner our attention. Then thirdly, understanding emotions. The emotions that we perceive can carry a wide variety of meanings. If someone is expressing angry emotions, the observer must interpret the cause of the person's anger and what that could mean. So this is usually what we don't do. So look at why someone is being short or abrupt or angry or irritated. Not reacting towards the actual frustration, but why they are like that. It will just create a better understanding. So for example, if your boss is acting angry, it means that they are dissatisfied with your work, or it could be because they got a speeding ticket on the way to work. So remember that this is very important. If your boss is irritable or angry, you may think immediately they're dissatisfied with you, but it could also be because they just got a speeding ticket or whatever. Lastly, managing emotions. The ability to manage emotions effectively is a crucial part of emotional intelligence at its highest level. Regulating emotions and responding appropriately, as well as responding to the emotions of others, are all important aspects. So this is becoming aware of what it is that you are feeling and then managing it effectively. You can't manage it effectively if you don't start at the beginning, like, why am I feeling irritated or frustrated? Why this is happening? Okay, let's look at, this is an easy to understand map for you. If you understand this map, you will be able to learn what emotional intelligence is all about. So firstly, the first block, knowing my emotions. Secondly, handling my emotions. Thirdly, manage relationships. And fourth, recognizing others' emotions. And in the middle here, we have motivate yourself. So this is what it means. Knowing my emotions means that knowing my emotional strengths and being sure about my abilities. So become aware of what frustrates you and irritates you, makes you angry. Become aware of what are your triggers, because then you start to know yourself. Secondly, handling my emotions. So now you're going to think, what are my triggers? And how do I feel when I experience it? Now you also want to start becoming aware of your physical body, because we think all is in here, but you have a physical reaction towards it. You'll feel that these muscles tense a little bit and the butterflies in the stomach. Become aware of that. We just ignore it, but it's right there. Then thirdly, manage relationships. So read and manage social situations, interact successfully with others, and negotiate with others. So learn to read and manage social situations. For example, when you interview someone, become aware of the fact that even though they are confident, qualified, they may also be nervous. So, be aware of all of those things. And then lastly, recognize others' emotions. So working with people from different cultures, talking to supervisors, subordinate, getting to know people. So recognizing other people's emotions. Stop thinking about yourself. In the beginning, you can think about yourself. What am I thinking, feeling, whatever. But then also start looking outside as well. Don't always think about yourself. What is wrong and up with other people? And try to put yourself in their shoes. And then in the middle here, motivate yourself. So let's look at a few examples. So this is not the self-evaluating questionnaire that we're going to do just now. These are just examples to make it practical for you in the workplace. So question 1, you have a new unfriendly coworker. Your boss asks you to interact and train this employee, and you need to work in a one-on-one manner. So which component of the emotional intelligence map will work most effectively here? So you can share your answers in the screen on the chat box. So you've got a new unfriendly coworker. Your boss asks you to interact with him. So which one of the EQ puzzles pieces will help you to deal with that new employee? So knowing my emotions, handling my emotions, managing relationships, or recognizing others' emotions. Okay, so some people say, most people here say recognizing others' emotions, and some people also say managing relationships. All right, there's also people that saying handling my emotions. So let's look at the answer. Okay, okay, there's the answer. Okay, so most of you actually has got it right. It's managing relationships and recognizing someone else's emotion. Listen, there's nothing wrong with understanding and knowing your own emotions, because that person's rudeness or offish type of behavior may also trigger things in you. So be aware of how you are feeling and what it's triggering in you. But also, if you have a high emotional intelligence, you will also recognize that not everything is about you. This could be because of that person. Maybe the person has got personal issues, personal stuff, and that's why they may be going through a very difficult time. It may have nothing to do with you or the workplace. So most of you are absolutely correct. It's recognizing others' emotions and managing those relationships. All right, next question. A safety inspector is visiting your office next week. You are under pressure and you need to pass the inspection. You are getting upset by small things and snapping at employees. Which component of the EQ map can work effectively here? So we've all been in this situation. A safety inspector is visiting your office. You are under pressure. You need to pass. So you are snapping at people. Okay, so what are people saying here? The responses are handling my emotions. Yes, and a lot of people are saying knowing my emotions, handling my emotions. Absolutely. So in this case, the answer, you are all correct. It would be knowing my own emotions and handling my emotions, because you want to know your own emotions, what triggers in you, and then handling it, like managing it. And just becoming aware of it will make you better at it, because you're going to ask me, but how do I get better? Becoming aware of your own emotions and how to handle your own emotions. Just the awareness is going to make a massive difference with you already. Because someone asked me the other day in one of the workshops, yeah, but how do I start? How do I start? This is how you start. You become aware of what are your triggers, knowing yourself, what are the triggers, what is it, what are the things that brings out things in you, and then just experiencing it and keeping an eye on it, and then managing it by effective expression. Let's do another example. Okay, Karen is a hard worker and very good at her job. Her boss wants to promote her to supervisor, but she's not sure whether she's ready. So which one of the components of the EQ map will work effectively here? So Karen is a hard worker. She's very good at her job. Her boss wants to promote her to supervisor, but she is scared. What could help her? Okay, so some people are saying here, recognizing others' emotions. All right. Some people are saying managing relationships. Some people are saying handling emotions. Okay, let's look at the answer. Oh, I jumped there. Okay, so the answer is knowing my emotions and being sure of my abilities. So knowing my emotions, but also handling my emotions. And can you see that that component will affect the rest? Those things will affect your relationship with others. And so it all links into one. But if someone wants to promote you and you are very unsure and you are hesitant, become aware of what is it that triggers in you? What are you scared of? And how are you reacting to it? So it's knowing my emotions and possibly a little bit of handling that emotion as well. Let's jump to the next question. So Michael reorganized his workstation to make it more efficient. His employees did not like the changes and is refusing the changes. So which of the EQ components can be effective here? So this is the supervisor. He reorganized the workstation. It's now better, but people don't like it. They're uncomfortable with the change. So what will help him in this case? All right, so someone is saying recognizing emotions, managing relationships. Yes. Everyone is saying the same thing, which is recognizing emotions and managing relationships. Let's see. So the answer is recognizing others' emotions and managing those relationships. So what would be important here, you are recognizing others' emotions, but you can also be aware of what it triggers in you, because you may think that they're rejecting your idea, and that may also trigger things within you. So can you see that even though everything comes out, but the most prominent, the first thing that will come out will be recognizing others' emotions and managing relationships. So you are all correct. Okay, another question. One of Katie's employees has been late 3 times this week, and she has to give him a warning. So she's nervous to talk to him and afraid of what he will think of her. Which one of the EQ components can be effective here? So Katie is the supervisor. Her employee has been late 3 times, but she's feeling nervous to speak to this person. So which one of the components will help? Okay, so people are saying, knowing my emotions, managing relationships. Yes, so I would agree here that the answer would be handling my emotions. Let me just quickly double check. Okay, so this is the answer to Katie. So handling my emotions and managing relationships. But knowing your own emotions is obviously also going to help here. Can you see that almost in every question, although I highlight 1 or 2 answers, actually you can make all 4 of the components applicable, because it starts with you, what triggers in your head, how do you respond to it, and then managing other relationships, but also seeing it from other people's point of view. So with all of these questions, you can actually always make all of the components applicable. And this is this last person here said, I feel like all of them have a part. It does. So even though some of them may come out a little bit stronger, like in this case, it would be handling my emotions, knowing my triggers, managing relationships. It would also be knowing yourself and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Okay, so how do I get better at this? Let's look at what it is that you can do immediately right now. So practice self-awareness. So like with most things emotional, you can't get better until you know what it is. You can only get better if you know what it is that needs to get better. When you lack self-awareness, trying to manage your emotions is like sitting in a tiny boat with a sail on top in a sea of emotions, completely at the whim of the currents of whatever is happening. So the only way that you can control it is to become aware of how you react to situations, what type of emotion gets elicited in you in a variety of situations. You have no idea what you're going, where you're going, or how to get there. And all you can do is scream for help. Self-awareness involves understanding yourself and your behavior on 3 levels, what you are doing, how you feel about it, and the hardest part, figuring out what you don't know about yourself. Okay, so once again, practicing self-awareness, knowing what you're doing. This whole page is about, we think that we know what we're doing during the day, but half of the time we're actually on autopilot. How many times are we on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, where hours goes past where you were not aware, you were looking at things. So removing distractions from your life, just trying to focus on being with yourself every now and again for a few minutes. And this would be, you don't have to particularly practice meditation and yoga and things like that, but doing some form of exercise or just having some time alone. So what I used to say, start off with during your working day, just having a cup of coffee with yourself without your phone and computer and just sitting for 15 minutes. Try that. You're going to see it's actually difficult. I want to see you trying that, and you're going to tell me next time how easy that was. Other forms of distractions is TV, drugs, alcohol, playing games. And we avoid these distractions because we want to, or we use these distractions in order to avoid that uncomfortable emotions. So just be aware, we all do this. We are preoccupied with these things. Stop some of these things just every now and again and be with yourself. Take that cup of coffee for 15 minutes during your normal working day, maybe 10 or 11 in the morning, and just sit there, just you and your cup of coffee for 15 minutes. You tell me next time how easy that was. Okay, knowing what you're feeling. So at first, once you actually pay attention to how you feel, you may freak out. You may become to realize that you're actually often pretty sad, or you may be kind of an angry person. So that phone addiction could just be a way of not dealing with some things. we may not want to be with ourselves too much. So try and explore this for a while. Okay. And then knowing your own emotional stuff. Once you see the icky, uncomfortable stuff you're feeling, you'll begin to get a sense of where your own little crazy resides. Identify your own stuff. For example, you may not like being interrupted while talking. You may be rude back to other people. Know what it is that your triggers are. It doesn't always mean that you are necessarily right. It also may not necessarily mean you're wrong. But focus, become aware of what it is that triggers you, what irritates you. Now, just being self-aware is not sufficient in and of itself. You want to be able to manage those emotions as well. Okay, so channel your emotions well. So people who believe that emotions are the be-all and end-all of life always seeks to control their emotions. You can't. You can only react to them. You can't control the emotions. So emotions are merely the signals to tell us to pay attention to something. This is probably the most important sentence you are going to hear today. Emotions are merely the signals that tells us to pay attention to something. So when you have that emotion, stop and think about it. Where did this just come from? When we can then decide whether or not that something is important and choose the best course of action in addressing it or not. Okay, so there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. There's only a good or a bad reaction to emotion. This is the second most important sentence you're going to hear today. So we always think that emotion is bad. Most people will think that it's bad. There's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. It's only an emotion, and then you have a good or a bad reaction to it. Anger can be a destructive emotion if misdirected, and you could hurt others in the process, but it can be a good emotion if you just use it to correct injustices or protect yourself and others. The second one, joy, can be a wonderful emotion when shared with people you love or when something good happens, but it can be horrifying emotion if it's derived from hurting others. So if you're getting joy from making a lot of money, but you are actually doing in other people, then joy is not a good thing. So such is the act of managing your emotions, recognizing that what you're feeling, deciding whether or not it's an appropriate emotion for the situation and act accordingly. So when you drive straight into traffic and you have an absolute meltdown, you have to put it into perspective. This is only traffic. For me to have a meltdown, it does not fit with the thing that's just happened. If someone has just died and you have a meltdown, that emotion reaction would be suitable. Not emotion, but that your reaction would be suitable. So put your reactions into perspective. Even if you need help with this, write it down. Write down what has just happened and write down how you reacted to it and write down the emotion that went hand in hand with it. Now, we do go into depth with this in the stress management course. So if you want to practice it, come to the next week's stress management course. Someone says, yeah, I got distracted. I got probably distracted and missed a lot. Don't worry, we will have more of these and I will also send you the notes. Okay, so the whole point of this is to be able to channel your emotions into what psychologists call goal-directed behavior, or what I prefer to call it getting your stuff together. Okay, we go to the next one. Okay, learn to motivate yourself. Have you ever lost yourself completely in an activity? For example, you start doing something and get immersed in it, and when you snap out of the quasi-hypnotic state, you somehow induced in yourself, you realize that 3 hours have passed and it felt like 15 minutes. This is a great feeling, and when you achieve it, it will motivate you to keep going. Now, I'm not talking about being on Instagram for 3 hours. We're talking here about something actual worthwhile, like completing something, doing a proper activity, contributing to something. Notice something important here, though. Don't wait for the feeling to arise before you start an activity. A worthwhile activity will actually create that motivation and feeling of energy within you. Start doing something, and then that feeling starts to build, which motivates you to keep going, and the feeling builds a little more, and so on and so on. So this is what we call the do something principle. You know, when they've got these clips on Facebook that say, start your day with just making your bed, then you've accomplished something already. Have those little things in your life. You will not believe how incredibly motivating it is to discipline yourself like that. And that discipline creates motivation and energy within you. It's if you just don't do anything, that's when you actually start feeling depressed and down. So tick off the things that you can do during the day that's contributing. Not Instagram, not Facebook, that's for another day. I'm talking about doing something, accomplishing something, ticking it off and say that I've actually made progress. Okay, recognize emotions in others will lead to healthier relationships. So everything we've covered so far deals with handling and directing emotions within ourselves. But the whole point of developing emotional intelligence should ultimately be to foster healthier relationships in your life. It will inevitably lead to healthier relationships in your life. If you don't understand yourself, your emotions, it will affect your other relationships. I just read about something where someone said the way that they were managing people at work, he was getting a negative response there. And then one day he just got home and his wife asked him for a divorce, and he realized that he doesn't listen. He doesn't care about the input of anyone else. It's all about him. And he had good intentions, not a horrible person. He had good intentions, but it backfires. You need to look at what other people are thinking, experiencing, wanting to express in order to understand what you are going through, but also them. So you do this by connecting and empathizing with others. So by both listening to others and sharing yourself honestly with others, that is through vulnerability. To empathize with someone does not necessarily mean to completely understand them, but rather to accept them as they are, even if you don't understand them. Let's go back to Lisa Nowak. We don't understand what the hell she was doing. She actually sounds crazy. But can you non-judgmentally just listen to her story? Just listen to the facts of the story. Just listen to her. Just putting yourself in her shoes, not condoning what she's done and saying, yeah, but it's good, or choosing a side. You're not doing that. Can you non-judgmentally listen and just hear what someone is saying, even if you don't completely understand, even if whatever you may be feeling, but I would never do that. Put that aside and just listen to her story non-judgmentally. And when I say non-judgmentally and empathically, I'm not saying that we are siding with her or approving the behavior. This is where people get it wrong. They think that empathic listening is I'm condoning your bad behavior. Not at all. You need to learn to separate the two. Relationships are where the emotional rubber hits the proverbial pavement. So just once again, that your relationship management will show you how good you actually are. Okay, let's look at the next one. Infuse your emotions with values. I just want to run quickly through this one because I want to do the test at the end. So in the 90s, emotional intelligence became a big buzzword in psychology. CEOs and managers read books and workshops and retreats on emotional intelligence to motivate their workforce. So therapists try to instill more emotional awareness in their clients to get a better grip on themselves. Parents were admonished to cultivate emotional intelligence in their children. So there was a time when emotional intelligence just boomed. So a lot of the sort of thinking misses the point, however, and that is that emotional intelligence is meaningless without orienting your values. So you might have the most emotional intelligent CEO on the planet, but if she's using her skills to motivate her employees to sell products made by exploiting poor people or destroying the planet, then it's not really emotionally intelligent. A father may teach his son the tenets of emotional intelligence, but without also teaching them the values of honesty and respect, he could turn into a ruthless, lying individual. So there's no emotional intelligence there. So, for example, con men are highly emotionally intelligent. They understand emotions quite well, both in themselves and especially in others. So, but they end up using that information to manipulate people for their own personal gain. So what I'm saying here is emotionally intelligent people are not necessarily always good people, but they know how to read themselves and other people. They value themselves above all else and at the expense of others. So, and then things get ugly and you value little outside of yourself. Okay, so let's look at Lisa Nowak. So for all her brilliance and expertise, she couldn't handle her own emotions and valued the wrong things. Firstly, she didn't understand what she was experiencing at all. You can't tell me that she knew and she could handle what she was feeling. She was probably totally overwhelmed, probably didn't know where it was coming from, what the hell was going on. She had just one eye on the goal, and that is to get rid of the threat and get back what she lost. Therefore, she let her emotions drive her off the proverbial cliff, going from an outer space to incarcerated space. So ultimately, we are always choosing what we value, whether we know it or not. And our emotions will carry out those values through motivating our behavior in some way. So in order to live life you truly want to live, you have to first be clear about what you truly value, because that's where the emotional energy will be directed. And knowing what you truly value, not just say what you value, is the most emotional intelligent skill you can develop. So express or identify what it is that you value in life, what it is that you stand for, what it is that triggers you that you don't like. There you already win. Okay, so this is the test. We've got another 12 minutes left, and I want us to do this test. You don't have to write down your answers if you don't want to, but I want you to, in your head, score yourself. So you can either say yes, no, or in the middle. So yes, no, sort of in the middle. That's your three answers here. This will give you an idea of where you are good at and whatnot. So firstly, let's look at self-awareness. So can you recognize your own emotions as you experience them? Have you seen people that's moody, but they can't really tell you why they're moody? They just say, I'm having a blue Monday, or I'm just moody. And it comes from somewhere. Always. It doesn't just exist. It doesn't just pop up. You will see this in the stress management course as well. An emotion, this just doesn't just pop up. It comes from somewhere. You are not unique in the sense that things just happens with you. No, we are all the same. Can you recognize your emotions as you experience them? Do you know your strengths and weaknesses? I ask people for feedback on what I do well and how I can improve. Are you someone that will ask someone else for feedback on how well you do and how you can improve? Or are you scared of it? Do you avoid it, dodge it at all costs? So see how you score. If anyone wants to share their answer, they can. And this is the time to be honest and open with yourself. There's no judgment here. Don't judge yourself if you say, you know what, I'm actually good with 1 and 2, but I'm not good with the last one. That's fine. That is what it's all about, is to actually accept the way that you are. So in his 1995 book on emotional intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, Goldman explained that people with high self-awareness are aware of their moods as they're having them. As soon as you can start becoming aware of, I'm getting edgy and irritated now, and you know, I've been working since 6 o'clock this morning and I haven't taken a break once, and it's already 1 o'clock. You're already getting there, because you're realizing, you know, I must take a break. I'm just getting tired. That's all it is. If I could just take a break, I'll feel better. That's already getting there. To increase your self-awareness, learn about mindfulness. So mindfulness is now the new buzzword for emotional intelligence. This involves focusing on the present moment, including how you're feeling. And keep a journal in which you write about and analyze emotional situations you experience from day to day. This is probably going to be one of the most practical things that you can do to build your self-awareness, is to write down the emotional situations that you experience, and becoming aware of the present moment. What has just triggered you in this present moment? So you also need to understand your strengths and weaknesses to build self-awareness. Do a personal SWOT analysis and ask for feedback from your boss, friends, trusted colleagues on how you can improve it. Because remember, you can be good in some things and not so good at other things. This is, once again, not a black and white scenario where you're good at all and bad at all. It doesn't work like that. This is the other thing you guys must get out of your heads. You may be good at some things, maybe not so good at other things. So build on your strengths, capitalize on it, and bring the other things back up with you. Okay, self-regulation, that's the second one. I lose my temper when I feel frustrated. Think about yourself when you drive into traffic. I know how to calm myself down when I feel anxious or upset. I find it difficult to move on when I feel frustrated or unhappy. So score yourself on that. Anyone who wants to share their feelings, they can. This is a time where you can share your feelings freely without judgment. So the question is, I lose my temper when I feel frustrated. I know how to calm myself down when I feel anxious or upset. I find it difficult to move on when I feel frustrated or unhappy. So self-regulation is about staying in control. To develop your skills in this area, learn how to manage your emotions effectively. If you often get angry, note what triggers this feeling and think about why this happens. That's your starting point. Why did it happen? Why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? Trace it back and you'll know it's that email. When I opened that email, it just triggered me, or that conversation just triggered me because these were the words that were used. Those words triggered me. Use techniques such as deep breathing to calm yourself down and give yourself time to pause before you respond to emails or requests. That is the best other tip that I can give you. You know, when something triggers you, just walk away for just a second. Just breathe before you send that email or pick up the phone. Just gather your thoughts first. You may also be affected by other negative feelings and emotions, such as anxiety and stress. So do what you can to manage these feelings effectively. And then accountability is another important element of self-regulation. Take responsibility for your actions and behaviors and make sure that they align with your values. Okay, so that is self-regulation. Now let's look at motivation. That's your third thing. I find it hard to focus on something over the long term. I feel I don't enjoy my work. I set long-term goals to review my progress regularly. I set long-term goals and review my progress regularly. So interestingly enough, that self-motivation and discipline actually falls under the emotional intelligence category. Isn't that interesting? So self-motivation is strongly affected by emotions. If you are distracted by your emotions, you may find it hard to see tasks through to the end. So think about those emotions where you think, I can't do it, I'm not good enough. Any of those thoughts that comes in that may distract you. So boost your motivation levels by developing self-discipline, by looking for and celebrating small wins. Simple jobs that when you've completed it, you've got a sense of achievement. We never celebrate the small wins. We actually are quite harsh and judgmental on ourselves when we do wrong or bad or lose or whatever, but we don't celebrate the small wins. Someone says, yeah, I tend to lose my temper, then bottle it all up and eventually explode. Okay, so this is an excellent example. So you do lose your temper, but you hold it in because you haven't learned how to effectively express it. Now, where you are winning is the fact that you know you lose your temper. You know what it is that's probably triggering it. So you're good with the first part, but then you need to learn how to effectively express it. And how you're going to do this is to learn how to choose the words correctly to explain what it is that you're feeling right now. Even if you can practice this by writing it down. And for some reason, if you bottle things up, it means that you may have learned that you can't express it, because if you express it, then you get hit over the fingers. You get punished for expressing it. That could come from your background. It could be strict discipline when you were younger. It could be a variety of things. I know that a lot of, like in the Afrikaans culture, when you were younger, you were not allowed to always express. You were sort of punished for expressing. So we all think and feel it, but you're not allowed to say it. So now we are older and we don't express it effectively. So what you're going to do now is formulate a sentence of what it is that you're feeling and thinking, and then try to say it to the person that's involved, but in a calm way, choosing good words. For example, I'm feeling very frustrated right now because I thought it would be finished and it's not. You can actually do that, but you have to practice it, because what happens with us that bottles it up, then you choose a range of words and we just explode, and then we say things that's not actually constructive. So what you want to choose is your words. You want to think about it, choose the words, but then the next step is to actually say it. It's challenging, but you can absolutely practice it. All right, so this is motivation. Let's move on to empathy. Can you score yourself here in a good way? So firstly, people have told me that I'm a good listener. We all think that we're good listeners, but most of us actually suck. So don't pat yourself on the shoulder too quickly. You're probably not as good as you think you are. So people have told me that I'm a good listener. I find it difficult to read other people's emotions. I use active listening skills when people speak to me. Let me just see, there was another question. Someone else said, I don't bottle things up. I handle things immediately. However, I come across wrong. My heart is never feeling what people hear. Okay, so this is another good example, because now this person has learned how to express it. So that's a healthy part. The only thing that you've not learned is to choose the exact correct words to express how you're thinking and feeling. So what you are communicating is something that's a little bit different from what you are actually feeling. So you still need to, you must actually write it down. But what's going to be important for you is to see, can you stop and write it down, or do you express too quickly? Because then that's another part that you can practice. If you are able to just think about it for a second before expressing it, you can write it down, but choose the words, because that is the thing that you may be doing wrong there. It could also be the tone of voice. Your words could be correct, but if your tone of voice is too harsh or too direct, or it sounds like you're angry, then it can also come across wrong. So there could be a variety of things. The words that you choose, the tone of your voice, maybe even your posture, whatever. So become aware of that and express it like you would someone that you're feeling really empathic towards. For example, a child. Would you, if you talk to a child, you will tone it down quite a bit. So this is also something that you can practice. Okay, so that comment actually is very good. It actually links to the slide, the empathy. People have told me that I'm a good listener. So if you express, you can express well if you've actually listened well. Do you know what the person's actually trying to say to you? Did you actually hear really what they were trying to say to you? I find it difficult to read others' emotions. I use active listening skills when people speak to me. So empathy is the ability to recognize other people's emotions and understand their perspective. It doesn't mean that you're saying that they correctly. They want to be heard and you want to be heard. No one is winning. You are being heard. Goldman calls this aspect of EQ the fundamental people skill. To develop empathy, start by simply talking about others people's viewpoint. Imagine how they are feeling and use active listening skills. And active listening means that you are going to say to them, what I am hearing that you are saying is A, B, and C, and then they can tell you whether you're correct. Try not to interrupt or talk about your feelings during the conversation. So try not to interrupt and don't talk about your feelings. Just first listen to them. Look at their body language too. It can tell a lot about their emotions. If you watch and listen to others, you'll quickly become attuned to how they're feeling. All right, and then I want to quickly look at the last one. Perceptual positioning. This is a technique that you can use. Position 1, your position looking through your eyes. Position 2, the position of other person looking back at you. Position 3, you're a fly on the wall. Okay, so there's 3 things. Your position is looking through your own eyes. Secondly, looking at through their eyes to you. And then if you're a fly on the wall, how would you sum up your situation? Social skills. I enjoy organizing groups. I avoid conflict and negotiations. I struggle to build rapport with others. So social skills is another part of emotional intelligence. If you're not a natural people person, it is possible to develop better social skills. So listen to other people. If you avoid conflict or negotiations, that is why this person that said, yeah, I may bottle up and then I explode. You will probably find that you avoid conflict and you avoid, it's almost like you're holding back on your own needs. You're not saying what it is that you want and what you need. So that's where it comes from. You've learned to hold it all in. And what all that you want to do is to communicate and express just your own needs, which you have a right to do. All right. The last thing I want to do is, these are interview questions. So our time is up, but I quickly want to go through the interview questions. or actually, I'm not going to go through the interview questions for when you interview someone in an interview and you want to gauge their emotional intelligence. These are the questions you can ask. So this is good for any HR person, but I'm not going to go through this. I want to go through what it is that you can do right now. So there's just 2 slides left. So firstly, now, today, you can start listening by being neutral and non-judgmental. Have patience. If there are periods of silence in your conversations with someone else, don't fill the silence, but just listen. Verbal and nonverbal feedback shows signs of listening, like smiling, eye contact, leaning in, mirroring what they're saying, asking questions, reflecting back of what they said to you, asking for clarification, summarizing. Can you see here? You're not talking about yourself or referring to yourself. You are trying to get out of them what it is that they're trying to say. Then what not to do? Firstly, still, you want to listen. Being stuck in your own head, not showing respect for the speaker, only hearing superficial meaning, not listening to the underlying meaning. Maybe somebody's anxious or stressed, but they come across as arrogant. They're just hiding their own insecurity. Interrupting, not making eye contact, rushing the speaker, becoming distracted, topping the story by talking about yourself, forgetting what was said in the past, asking for unimportant details, focusing too much on details and missing the big picture, ignoring what you don't understand, very important, daydreaming, and only pretending. There's a question here or a comment. So someone says, but for how long does one have to be patient with someone? So be patient until you know what it is that they're trying to say. Patience you can have forever, but patience doesn't mean that you are that they are not performing or that they are. So for example, if I put that into if you have to speak to someone about bad performance, have patience with them in the sense of listening to what was their problem, why couldn't they do it, put yourself in their shoes. But that doesn't mean that you're going to allow them to just have poor performance. Then you talk about what it is that they can do and how they can get enabled to do so. If they still don't do it the way that they should have, then you do take your disciplinary action. So if I can answer your question, you give someone a fair chance. I hope that answers your question. Give them a fair chance. So with Lisa Nowak, what we did, we gave her a fair chance to listen and really understand or whatever. But the law will still take its course. She still almost went to jail. So can you see that we are non-judgmentally listening, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have a consequence for your action for almost killing someone. So someone says, yeah, thanks, okay, this was great. This presentation will be shared with you. Valuable session. Thank you so much. So thank you for everyone that's joined. I hope I'm going to see you next week, the 13th of October, for the stress management. Let me just see. Yes, and